Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are cracking open a book that was basically the original social network, long before the internet even existed. So yeah, let's dive into Dale Carnegie's absolute masterpiece.
Okay, so get this. The book first came out way back in 1936, and it has sold a truly staggering number of copies. We're talking over 30 million worldwide. I mean, that's not just a bestseller. That puts it in this super elite club of the most read books of all time.
But that massive number, it kind of raises an even bigger question, doesn't it? How on earth did a book written during the Great Depression, almost 100 years ago, become this timeless, global phenomenon that people are still buying today? What's the secret sauce?
To really get it, we have to travel back in time, back to the world it was born into. See, this wasn't just some book that came out of nowhere. It was an answer to a huge, unspoken need that was bubbling up in society.
Just think about it for a second. Back then, universities were all about teaching the classics, Latin, Greek, all that stuff. But there was pretty much zero practical education on how to handle the most important and complicated subject there is, other people. The world was industrializing like crazy, but the classrooms were stuck in the past.
And people knew something was missing. A huge survey at the time, done by the University of Chicago, uncovered something fascinating. Turns out, after their own health, the number one thing adults wanted to learn about was how to understand and get along with each other. But a practical guide for that? It just didn't exist.
And that's where Dale Carnegie comes in. He saw this massive gap in the market. He saw this desperate need and created a course, which then became this book that was basically the world's first ever real-world laboratory for human relations. He wasn't just talking theory, he was testing it.
So, what is actually in this game-changing book? Well, it all boils down to a few core principles that are, shockingly simple, but incredibly profound when you actually use them.
Carnegie's first rule, and probably his most famous, is based on a really simple but powerful insight into how we're all wired. And it's this: criticism just doesn't work.
And to prove his point, Carnegie pulls out this wild example, the infamous criminal Two-Gun Crowley. Now this guy, while he's literally in a shootout with the police, writes a letter claiming that he's got a kind heart.
And that's the whole point Carnegie's trying to make. If a guy like that doesn't blame himself, what chance do you think you have changing an everyday person through criticism? His argument is that criticism wounds a person's pride. It puts them on the defensive instantly, and once that happens, any shot at real, meaningful change is just gone.
And it's not just about what not to do. He lays out 6 simple ways to actually get people to like you, and they're all about shifting your focus onto them. A perfect example is number 3. Just remember and use someone's name. Carnegie said that to any person, their own name is the sweetest, most important sound in any language. It's so small, but it proves you're actually listening.
Okay, so the principles sound pretty straightforward, but this is where we get into the big modern debate about this book. Do these ideas really hold up today?
I mean, let's be honest. We live in a much more skeptical, media-savvy world now, and people are really split on this. Is this book a timeless guide to building real, genuine connections? Or is it just an old-school manual for manipulating people into doing what you want?
Yeah, the arguments pretty much fall into these 2 camps. On one side, you have people who see these principles as a way to fulfill a deep, basic human need we all have, the need to feel appreciated and seen. But on the other side, you have people who say it's just a recipe for being phony if your heart's not in it.
The supporters will argue that, especially now in our super digital, sometimes lonely world, people are more desperate than ever for authentic connection. So in that light, taking a genuine interest in someone isn't manipulation at all. It's the key to building the real relationships we all want.
But the critics? They fire back with a pretty harsh warning. They say if you just follow these rules like a robot, like it's a checklist, you don't come across as charming. You come across as fake, like a car salesman reading a script, and that can totally backfire.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because this is the one point where both sides, the critics and the fans, actually meet in the middle. Everyone agrees that there's one secret ingredient that makes it all work: sincerity. The techniques are useless unless the interest you're showing is actually real.
So after all that, what's the final verdict? What should we, here in the 21st century, take away from a book that's almost 90 years old?
Well, the most balanced way to look at it seems to be this. Carnegie's book isn't a social Bible. It's not the one and only answer to every human interaction. Think of it more like a social toolbox. You have different tools for different jobs, right? You wouldn't use a hammer to fix everything, and you probably shouldn't use every Carnegie principle in every single conversation. They're options.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on in our own lives. We all want to connect with people. We all crave that real, authentic connection. So the question this old book still forces us to ask ourselves is, where's that line? Where do we draw the line between using a helpful technique and just having genuine interest? And maybe, just maybe, can they actually be the exact same thing?